When I was a young girl, my paternal grandmother had a giant Nutcracker. He was green, he had the beard, he had a wonderful hat on and boots, and I was in love with him. And so I started a collection of my own. I now have 5 Nutcrackers, the Nutcracker Lego set. I listen to the Nutcracker about 10 times every year, not just at Christmas time. And because of me taking a Perspectives of Fine Arts class, I have now read the book. The only versions of the Nutcracker that I have seen are the Barbie version, Fantasia version, Tom and Jerry, like the very original recording of it on DVD. That's about it. I've never seen it in person, which is a little sad, but that's okay. Maybe this year, maybe someday soon. I would love to see it in person, but that's all right. A lot of this video is actually inspired by John Solo, who had released a comparison of the Nutcracker story to the Nutcracker ballet and movies in 2023. So thank you to John Solo. He's always been an inspiration for me when doing book to film or modern day comparisons. So a lot of this is inspired by him. I will link his video in the description below. In 1816 in Berlin, E.T.A. Hoffmann wrote Nutcracker and Mouse King in German. It was a very short story. It was okay. I mean, I read it, a translated version, I liked it. But in 1845 in France, a much more popular author, Alexandre Dumas, he rewrote it in French. And because he already had a known audience, it picked up a little bit more popularity and thus became well known, especially as a Christmas story. Alexandre Dumas, even though he rewrote it, very little actually changed. A few names changed, like the last name of our main character changed, and a few characters' names changed, but for the most part it is the same story. So I practically read the same story twice, which was lovely. I enjoyed it, but it got a little boring as it was a reread. So our story begins with a young girl. She's about 7 years old. In the book, her name is Marie. In the ballet, her name is Clara. And this is a change that came, I don't know exactly why they picked the name Clara. In the book, Clara is the name of her doll. But Marie is gifted a Nutcracker by her godfather, Drosselmeyer. And she becomes so infatuated with this Nutcracker, she falls asleep with it on Christmas Eve night. And that night, the 7-headed Mouse King approaches her, and the Nutcracker attacks him to save Marie. Pretty much from there is where the book and the ballet split in storyline. So I'm going to continue on with the book, and we'll come back to the ballet later. Marie is actually very brave, and she throws her shoe at the Mouse King. This is how he retreats. But in the process, she ends up breaking and shattering a glass cabinet and injuring herself. She becomes bedridden because of it. And in the morning, her godfather, Drosselmeyer, comes in, tells her the story of how the Nutcracker was actually his nephew, a real boy, who was turned into a Nutcracker. I don't really want to go into the story very much. It took a lot of the book though, and it is very, like, I've never seen a ballet version of this story with it in it. Marie is bedridden, and Drosselmeyer tells her the story of how the Nutcracker was actually his nephew, who had been cursed by the Mouse King's mother, and because she ended up indirectly cursing the Nutcracker, he had to find a girl who would love him in his ugliness, and thus it is Marie. Marie ends up finding out the story, realizing that, oh my goodness, There is a boy trapped in my Nutcracker. My Nutcracker is a real boy. Not only a real boy, the nephew of my godfather. So she wants to help him turn back into a real boy. She gives him a sword so he can finally attack and get rid of the seven-headed Mouse King. Ballet picks back up, and the Nutcracker takes Marie to the land of the sweets, and they meet all the different people, and all the different people dance in celebration because the Mouse King is finally dead, and their Nutcracker, who they see as their prince now, is there. So they're in the land of the sweets, and everybody celebrates. And that's how the ballet ends. The book actually ends a little bit afterwards when Marie is taken back home. The now nephew Drosselmeyer, who is a real boy again, no longer a Nutcracker, he shows up, he introduces himself to Marie. He actually proposes to Marie, and they get married a year later. Now, in the book, this is a little concerning, she is 7 years old. All of the renditions of the Nutcracker I have seen, Marie or Clara is a grown woman. So I never saw an issue with this, and I like that version of the Nutcracker the best, with her as a grown woman. Her being a young girl does not quite make sense, but I have seen some snippets of the ballet where both the Nutcracker and Clara are young children and they don't get married. So, very interesting point. Okay. Going to now the history of the ballet. In 1892, in St. Petersburg, Russia, the ballet is written with choreography by Marius Petipa and music by Pyotr Tchaikovsky, one of my favorite composers. Tchaikovsky is commissioned to write this music. He is a little nervous about it. He ends up taking his time to write it and wants to push back the deadline that he's given. He ends up making it just in time, though, within the same year that they're wanting, and it is released, but he was under a lot of stress as he wrote it. Tchaikovsky wasn't the only one who was under a little bit of stress, because Petipa ended up falling ill, and so his understudy, or his second hand, Lev Ivanov, he takes over for Petipa in choreography. So there's kind of two hands dealing with the choreography. The Nutcracker is released in December of 1892, and it is not welcomed in the ballet community. Not many people really enjoyed it. They thought it was clumsy. They thought that the dancers just looked silly on stage. They didn't know what to think of it at all. They hated it, actually. They were like, this is not anything close to ballet. This puts ballet to shame. John Solo mentions in his video, and I didn't realize this until I went back into the book, but the Nutcracker, when there's a scene in the book when the Nutcracker and Marie meet up with a whole bunch of shepherdesses, and in the ballet, this is the dance of the snowflakes. But the Nutcracker actually sees this dance that they are given, and he hates it. He's like, I'm so sorry for this horrible dance. So I find it really funny knowing that story now, and knowing that the ballet was seen as horrible. Like, it kind of predicted itself. And I mean, for the most part, it's a story about seven-headed mice and children, and so what do you expect? It's gonna look weird and clunky. And then there's also in the land of the sweets, there's many different kinds of people, so all the dancing styles are going to be completely different. So I see the dancing, the horrible dancing, so to speak, as part of the loveliness of the essence of the Nutcracker. I love the different dancing styles, even though they are silly and I laugh at it. Like, I find that as part of the enjoyment. So we have the Nutcracker as it is in the 1800s, very late 1800s, and it is not received well. So how did it become so popular? Well, Tchaikovsky ended up taking the full list of his songs for the ballet, and he limits it down to just 8. And these 8 songs by Tchaikovsky become what is called the Nutcracker Suite, which is you've probably heard this term before. The Nutcracker Suite is the Nutcracker as we know it today. However, with the Nutcracker being shortened, this also means the choreography would have to be shortened. In 1956 in New York City, for the New York City Ballet, George Balanchine rewrites the choreography now for the Nutcracker Suite. And he makes it nicer. He cuts out, I believe the original Nutcracker ballet had that middle portion of the story that Drosselmeyer tells to Marie, to Clara, about how the Nutcracker came to be and how he became enemies of the Mouse King. I believe that was in the original, the full version of the Nutcracker ballet, but the Nutcracker Suite, as I said, cuts that part out. And so now, by George Balanchine, he rewrote the choreography for the Nutcracker Suite, and it becomes much more popular. And that is what the Nutcracker is today. Whew. So many rewrites, so many critic reviews, but now it is a beloved story of Christmas that a lot of people enjoy. I will mention, though, in my translation of the book, there is no mention of sugar plums or a sugar plum fairy or fairies in general. And so, I don't know, John Solo's version, the translation that he read had that. I could kind of see where it was mistranslated in my version, but I didn't see it. And I know the ballet doesn't have it. So I don't know where sugar plums and the sugar plum fairy come from. If you think you know, go ahead, write it in the comments, because I have no clue. For my class who's gonna watch this video, for my professor, and for everybody else, what would you do if you wrote a story and it didn't become popular until it was rewritten at least 4 times? Would you still see it as a success, or is it no longer your work? I don't know. Just felt like I should leave that question there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you also enjoy the Nutcracker and enjoy me uploading this video. Thank you so much. Bye.